I gave it 5 minutes, then turned it off and turned it on again and set the timer again for another 5 minutes. It's not doing shit.
Hi, Rebecca and Mark. It's Vianne. I'm just getting on.
Can you, Mark? Can you go turn off the audio? Make sure the audio is off so they can hear us talk.
Your camera's down here.
Hi, Vi. Can you hear me?
Folder.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Vi?
I'm in my meeting, Jill.
Okay, I'm here on this.
Yeah, I got the tickets.
Okay, I see that. Thanks. Hi, Vi.
Yay. And
There's Vi.
we should be good there.
Okay. Hi, Vi. Did you hear me?
Vi's on mute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I guess I was muted. I'm sure you'd love to have a permanent mute button for me.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Vi.
Hi, Joan.
So good to see you, my dear.
Good to see you. Well, you been staying out of trouble?
I'm trying.
Just staying at home, huh?
Yeah.
Getting pretty old.
Yeah. My daughter, Peggy, I get to go to her house or to
That's
the
still,
doctor's.
huh?
That's about it.
To church.
And to church, of course. Yes.
Oh, so they're letting your church stay open?
I go to Peggy's church and it is open and they're really good with masks and
Oh, good. And staying apart?
yeah, they're very good. The one that I went to has not even opened yet. So,
Right.
yes. Yeah. So you other ladies are well?
We're good. We're good. Della's joining us.
Yes, I am in the corner.
She's just in the corner. You can't see her. So it looks like people are just coming in. I was worried about having to approve everybody to come in, but it looks like I hit the right button and people are just coming in. But we're waiting, of course, for our speaker fella, Felder. Him and I went through his stuff just yesterday, and it worked then. So we'll see. He's coming all the way from Mississippi.
Oh my.
He's got a real charming Southern accent.
Nice.
Wow.
He's a real people person, so he really wants to come to Spokane and meet everybody and do a one-on-one. There's Bobby. He's all curly cute.
Especially during the speaker.
Yeah, there's a bunch of plants.
About muting.
I had to watch YouTube to figure that out. He actually had to be into a call to make it happen.
Go ahead and do this.
Is there anything we're supposed to do to be able to hear the speaker?
Well,
I've never done this before.
right. I'm not an expert at it either. So it just depends on your individual system.
Oh, okay.
If you can hear me, you should be able to hear him.
Okay.
So it looks like it's working for you.
Thank you.
New world.
We're still waiting for him to come on. Somebody's barking. Here's Kate Dixon.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
So see when I hit this little side button, all that comes up. So where it said make a host, that's what I have to do when he comes up so he can show his stuff. But yeah, folks are still coming in.
Yeah. But that's still like to see.
Yeah.
Vi, you might want to recommend people to mute once they check in,
Mute when they check in.
after they check in. That way, we're not hearing background noises of phones and cars and dogs barking, etc.
But Vi, you can also mute. You can mute everybody.
I thought you guys had to do the mute. I thought the speaker did the muting.
Well,
She-
you've got your own little mute button in the very left, left-hand corner in the bottom. There's a little microphone, and it should say mute or unmute.
But Vi, you can mute everybody.
Yeah, then I don't know when they want to unmute it and ask them a question.
Well, if we mute it, will we still be able to hear the speaker?
Yes.
Yes, that's just your mute. That's your voice. You should
Oh,
still
okay.
be able to hear the speaker.
All
We
right.
can use chat if we want to ask a question, just hit in the chat.
Yeah, you can do chat or you can talk and he can hear you. I was saying he's really a people person, so he does want to interact with people. I've got everybody up here on the top, and a lot of people have already muted their stuff. So I don't think I need to go in there and do everybody.
Diane, one of the features of Zoom is that only one person can talk at a time. So if I
Wow.
shout, then you can't talk, and you see that by the screen that's around, the frame around the screen. And why don't you suggest people use the chat to put their questions in the chat at the bottom?
Okay.
And there's also a raised hand feature, I believe.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, you,
Yay.
depending upon what you sign in with, you may not have all those features. If you're on a phone, you only hear the speaker.
Oh, it's depending on how you're looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go find my husband to get him out.
Missing in action, huh?
He roams, he roams.
Hey, Vivian.
Hi
Woohoo.
there. Oh, there's Felder,
Oh, where's he?
I think.
Yes. Do I look tall?
There he
Do I
is.
look?
Yay.
Do I
Get
look,
out the right time.
do I look tall and smart?
Looks like you took a bath from yesterday.
A bath? I did wash my hair. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen?
We're getting people coming in. I probably have about, well, usually it's kind of lined up here. Yeah, more folks are coming in, so I think we'll give them a few minutes.
Okay. Well, hey, y'all. While we're waiting, howdy.
Squadron, get in here. Get in here. Yep.
Have y'all had cold weather yet?
Yep.
A little bit. It's kind of been only in the 40s. It hasn't been too bad.
No, that ain't cold. Heck, that's not even cold from Mississippi.
Here you are, dear. Now you have your own.
So what?
I don't think he heard you. But we have sunshine, which is nice.
Yeah, we had sunshine today. We had our first hard freeze night before last, but I covered my zinnias up. I still got cut flowers.
Where are you? Where are you?
Right now I'm in Mississippi.
Okay, I'm from Louisiana. So
What part?
about 40. I grew up in near about 40 miles away from New Orleans,
Okay.
between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
It's what we call coon-ass country where I'm from.
Right.
I have a sister-in-law named Broussard, so I'm laughing with us, not at us.
Broussard, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, let me get my kitty out the way. Oh,
That's a big cat.
one of them at least, huh?
Does anybody know any good pirate jokes?
Nothing you could say in mixed company.
Oh, pirate joke? Yeah. What did the octogenarian pirate say on his birthday? I'm 80.
Oh,
I'm just trying to see if you're paying attention.
Yeah. If our brain cells are working, huh?
Yeah. Oh,
Where
boy.
are you from, Karen?
Karen, where are you from? I'm Ponchatoula.
Oh, okay. I grew up in a little Narco, Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, just a few miles south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Hmm? But when it's 50 degrees there, it's really cold because of the humidity.
Yeah.
Like you never warm up. It just goes through your bones. So, I'd rather this. At least we're dry. Hmm?
I live in England half the year, and it's snowing in my home there.
Oh, okay.
But they won't let me in this year because my
Oh.
American passport is apparently the most diseased on earth.
Okay, gotcha. Huh?
After 12 years, you think they'd let me just slide on in.
Probably not.
Nope. I
I'm
understand.
from England. Where in England are you from, Felder?
I'm a northerner, me.
Oh, where?
Lancashire, a little place called Darwin.
Oh, okay. Born
Just
and
anyway.
raised. I was born and raised in London,
Yep.
but my sister lives in Gloucestershire, just a few
Yeah.
miles from where Prince Charles has his home.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to be able to have a garden tour at Highgrove.
Nice.
Yes.
I've been there a few times. Were you,
Yeah.
were you there recently? Did you see a stumpery?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I've been there a couple of times actually.
Well, I've been going over there for about 30 years, I guess. Been living there half the year for the past 12.
Okay. So you have a typical English garden over there?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Part of my garden is typical, but I live in a terrace house, and so I've got a very small back garden, and I've got a little raised bed herb garden, and with the typical gnome and all that. So, yeah.
Well,
By the way,
sometimes
for the rest of y'all, for the rest of y'all, people from the south of England are sort of like our version of New England, and they look down on people up north in England like our New Englanders look down on Southerners. So when I say I'm from the north, that means I'm sort of like from their version of Mississippi.
That's not true.
Oh, it is true. It most certainly is true.
It's not true.
People down south tell jokes about Northerners. It's not a bad thing. It's all right. It's good. It's just it's more laid back part of the country because we're poor and we're proud. So.
And you say it as it is.
Yes. Well, that's the only when you get old enough to have white hair growing out of your ears, you just tend to say what you think. How are we doing, Vivian? What's going on?
Well, I just checked. We've got 30 people right now. So I guess we could get going, and they're just going to come in and out on their own.
Okay. Now, how long do we have? Do we have 40 minutes before they kick us out?
I thought so. I don't know for sure. I guess we could, if they kick us out, they kick us out. So,
well, if they do, bye.
I guess I'll welcome everybody to our Zoom meeting for December. I've been asked to ask you to mute when you come in so we don't hear your background noises. And then if you want to ask Felder a question at the end of his presentation, there's the chat button, the chat at the very bottom of the right-hand screen. You can do that. Or I guess you can unmute and try to ask a question that way, but I think just one person can talk at a time. So originally Felder was going to come to the Garden Club and fly all the way from Mississippi to talk to us. That wasn't going to happen. So I contacted him and he graciously offered to join us for our little short presentation today. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give over to him so he can show you stuff off his computer. So that's what we're doing right now.
Is that all right with y'all?
Be in charge.
Is it okay with y'all? A couple of things first. Vivian sent around in the email some of my credentials, and I do have credentials, but I'm also just a retired horticulture professor. But since I retired, I decided I'm not going to be a horticulturist anymore. I'm going to be a gardener. And turns out I'm not a very good gardener. I'm a garden expert. So, you know, ask me stuff, but don't ask me to show results. And I'm all right with that, you know, because I've been around. I've sat on an aircraft carrier during Vietnam. So I've been around. I'm an old guy. And one of the things that I found, and I lecture pretty well all over the country. I think I've lectured in 42 states or something. So I spend a lot of time traveling. I do the flower show in Seattle and been to Portland numerous times lecturing and blah, 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 blah. But I want to start out with a recipe that partly explains my approach. And it also helps get you in the cadence of how I talk, because I'm a Southerner. We're not slow because we're stupid. We're slow because we're in a stupor. We've got all year. You know, we don't have to get ready for stuff like our friends in New England do, or Canada. Because of that, we tend to spread things out. We tell stories. We talk a lot. I have a very similar climate to yours in some ways. Here in Mississippi, our average low is going to be in the 20s, sort of like yours, and it'll dip down to the teens or colder, but it'll get cold and then it'll warm back up for 3 weeks. We just had 25 degrees 2 nights in a row, and it's going to be 75 for the next 2 weeks. See, so that gives our plants it's harsh on our plants. They can't calm down and stay calm. They're up and down and up and down, and they lose their hardiness. So we have plants that will tolerate 60 below zero, that will freeze here at 28 because it's been warm for too long. In the summertime, it gets hot. You know, in Washington, in your part of the country, it gets really, really hot, but it cools down at night. Here, we're lucky if it cools down to 80 degrees. At 3 in the morning in July, it may be 80 degrees. And as anyone from Louisiana knows, the humidity is so thick you can lick it. It is insufferable. So we have to go slow. If you stand still, you sweat because it won't evaporate. See, so we tend to take things easy in the summertime, and we frolic in the wintertime when we have nice weather. So anyway, that's sort of to give you have a lot more similar climate to what I have in Northern England. Never really gets that cold, but it stays cool. And in the summertime on a hot day, it still cools down at night. So we sort of we're together on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show a few things of things that I grow, a few things about my garden, but I'm going to talk about a philosophy called slow gardening, which is, are you familiar with slow food?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's the opposite of fast food. It's homegrown, home recipes, doing things traditional ways, taking your time, savoring what you do. In other words, the way our grandparents gardened, they took their time, they cooked at home, they didn't eat out all the time. And gardening is sort of the same way. But I want to give this recipe. It's a real short recipe, and it's from a real garden. It's from a real cookbook. It's not a joke. It's not tongue in cheek. It's real recipes. But the title of the book is called White Trash Cooking. Have any of y'all heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
No?
No.
It's a real book, and it's got real recipes, things that we were raised eating, you know, normal stuff. Crumbling your crackers, your cornbread, and your buttermilk. You know what I'm saying? But there's a recipe. Is that me or you? Anyway, there's a recipe in there called Stella Leaf Punch Pie. Can y'all hear that okay? Can you hear me all right?
Somebody's ringing.
Hello.
It can't. There we go. Anyway, Stella Lee's Punch Pie. Now, this is the metaphor for gardening. So follow me on this. And it's also to get you into the cadence of how I talk. You take an old pie from the day old rack at the supermarket, you know, let's say an old apple pie. Now, you can eat that in the parking lot just like it is. I've done it. Some of you have done it. But what you do is you take it home, and after it's been baked, you punch holes all in the top and sprinkle on a little sugar. Now, don't load it down. And then you pour rum or brandy, getting it in all the holes. You with me on this so far? And once you get rum and brandy in it, you set fire to it. That's called making it prissy. Now, did y'all follow that? What have we done? We took something that was simple and easy and beautiful that everyone could understand, and we made it more and more complicated for fewer and fewer people. The more complicated you get, the fewer people are interested in it. And I would submit that that's what horticulture does to gardening. It takes something very simple and easy that we can all understand, and it makes it more and more detailed to where fewer and fewer people can keep up or really care. That's my philosophy. Y'all still with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to jump into some slides, and I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna go pretty quickly, and the way I talk, it's gonna be hard for some of y'all to follow. But let me see if I can do this. Uh-oh. There. Can y'all see this all right? Slideshow. Slideshow from the beginning. Can y'all see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, this is where I'm from. I'm from a place south of Memphis, Tennessee. It's called the Mississippi Delta. And it's a place that's not like where you are. You grow lilacs. I think you're called is it the city of lilac or lilac city or something about lilacs, right? Well,
Yeah.
we can't grow lilacs in my part of the country because it's not cold enough for long enough in the winter, and they don't bloom right. And then they die because of the heat and humidity at night. They don't cool off at night. So we can't grow stuff that you grow, but we can grow crepe myrtles. And I don't know if y'all grow crepe myrtles or not, but that is a tree that blooms from late spring until autumn for us, and it looks like a lilac. It doesn't have that fragrance, but we have gardenias and so many other things along those lines. Some of our native plants include oak leaf hydrangeas, which will grow all out in our woods because basically I'm a woodland area. But I was raised along a bayou. You from Louisiana will understand this. It's a swampy, snake-filled hellhole. And we've got palmettos, we've got cypress, we've got Louisiana iris, we've got wonderful plants, but it's a swampy part of the country. It's where Kermit the Frog is from. His creator was born 12 miles from where I was born and raised. It's the home of the blues. A lot of you are familiar with B.B. King. He's from my hometown. We have lizards. Y'all have these lizards that change colors? No? They're anoles. They're up high. They grab things all the time. They can change from green to brown. They're called anoles. Some people are called camellias. We also have these things. I'm not making this up. This picture was taken 2 years ago, and this alligator was caught about 23 miles from where I live right now. So you've got moose, right? We've got things that'll eat moose. But also we've got cute little things. This is the possum that lives in my garden. I've got raccoons and possums and squirrels and snakes and, sweet non-poisonous snakes, all sorts of things. But this is my little possum. I call him Pogo. He eats stuff that I would rather not have. So anyway, just want to let you know, this is a different kind of world. In my garden in England, I have a little small cottage garden in the back, excuse me, and I have a little wattle fence, and I grow herbs and vegetables, and I have a little antique gnome in it. So I try to get into that sort of thing. But in Mississippi, we're known not just for the blues and for our stories, but for our food. Matter of fact, we're a cooking society. We're an outdoor society. This is my dad when he was making some ribs. It's a big part of our culture is cooking and sharing with it. And you grow rhubarb. As a matter of fact, I suspect that anybody who doesn't have a pie plant probably doesn't have any friends because it's that easy to share. But rhubarb won't grow for us. Instead, we grow things like okra. And then not just to eat it, because some of us don't like to eat okra, but it's a pretty plant. It's native to Africa. And a lot of our plants are from the hot, dry sub-Saharan Africa, because that's the climate we have. I grow a variety called burgundy because it's a pretty plant. And even if I don't like to eat it, I think it's a pretty plant and it needs no water. It'll go for 2 months with no water at all. And that's important to me because it's a hot climate and because I travel a lot. Now, where I live, this is what we call home cooking: the cornbread, the black-eyed peas, the homegrown tomatoes, the basil. This is homegrown Southern cuisine. It's not what you're going to find in Seattle. You'll probably spend $20 for a meal like this in Seattle, and they're just copying our comfort food. And I like to compare gardening to comfort food and home cooking. I think that's important. And it's about savoring things. How many of you can look at this picture with the tomatoes, tomatoes for those of you from the UK, the cucumbers and the basil or basil? How many of you can feel the olive oil from just looking at this picture? Because if you can, that means you've done it. If you can't feel that from just looking at it, you probably haven't experienced it. It's what we call umami or savory, you know, sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and then that savory thing, the flavor of mushrooms and chicken soup, umami. Well, that translates to gardening as well, doing things for just the pleasure of it, not the challenge of it. Is growing your own herbs, putting them in your food to make you feel better about what you're doing. Don't have to have a big garden. If you grow just a few little things and it enhances the quality of your lives, one cut flower, one chopping up some oregano or some basil into your soup. This is what makes us feel good about what we do. And that's what gardening is about. Let me mention this, horticulture, and I'm a retired horticulture professor, written 30-something books, blah, blah, blah. But horticulture is goal-oriented, is product-oriented. You're trying to fill a freezer, get yard of the month, or have a nice garden, or anything that has a result. All these little nuances, the little shortcuts, the efficiencies, the horticulture makes a difference if you're trying to make a living or achieve something. That's the left brain of crop production horticulture. Again, I'm a horticulturist. The right brain, though, of gardening is doing it just for the love of it. Gardening is the journey, not the destination. It's the process, not the product. And a lot of people a lot of horticulture skip over that. What we call a garden is basically comes from an old English word, gordos, which means guarded area. You could put a fence out there. When you put a fence out, you're either in your area or you're outside the area. There's out there, there's in here. And what we do with our little guarded areas, we make it feel comfortable and safe and secure and make us feel like that we've got a little bit of a grip. Some people mow a lot of grass. I don't have any grass. I wrote the book on lawn care in the South. I don't have a blade of grass because I'm gone. I'm lazy. I'm tired. I don't want to do all that stuff. So instead, I've got other stuff. But instead of having grass to mow, I make my bed up in the morning. When I make my bed up and smooth the curtain, fluff up the pillows and smooth out my quilt, I take a step back and I look at it and I feel like I've actually done something for that day. I have done something. I've got a grip. And a lot of people mow grass for that same reason, to feel like they've done something or to show their neighbors that they're able of doing that. So a lot of gardening is personal or social, about trying to make people feel like you know what you're doing. My little guarded area, I'm going to show you a few pictures of what my garden looks like. And it's a cottage style garden from the South. I do live in England a big part of the year, most of the summer, most of the winter. I travel around the United States in the spring and the fall with my lectures, but I do I have a national public radio program and I write a lot of columns and I write for HGTV. I do that online, so I do that just as easily from England. My partner of 12 years, Susan, is head of marketing of David Austin Roses. Some of you may grow David Austin Roses. We live about 4 miles from David Austin Roses. And it's wonderful, but those won't grow where I live. I've seen laburnum tunnels. We can't grow laburnums in Mississippi. And when I see a warning that says 90 degrees is killer heat, I'm thinking, I wish it would just get down to 90 part of the time in August in Mississippi. So anyway, this is what my house looked like when I first bought it. Just want to let you know, this is my little cottage in Mississippi. It's a lot of grass, little gumdrops and meatballs. People who live there were real proud of it. And I took something that looked like that, basically looked like this. Houses at the top, the streets at the bottom. That's my entire front garden from side to side. It's small. I took that and turned it into this, because I'm a horticulturist, I'm a gardener. This little bit of green area that has grass, no more grass here. I got rid of that. It's daffodils down. From the street, how many of y'all live in a neighborhood would not let me live there? I've got a cottage garden, but I've got a fence out there by the street. And what people don't realize, they don't see my garden. They're seeing the back of my garden, because my garden is laid from the house looking out towards the street. So when you're driving by from the street, you're looking at the back of my fence, and I just put native plants and a few other things. I've got an entry arbor that's a raised garden, but that's what you see from the street. If you go, and by the way, this is my green roof entry arbor with the rosemary and the liriope, the a cascading black heat sweet potato. That's what it looks like. This is what I see from the house looking towards the street though. And you can't see that from the street. This is my little private area. I grow a lot of unusual plants. These are all native azaleas. These are native to Mississippi. It's not the Asian azaleas that so many people enjoy. These are the native ones that grow out through our woods. And so I collect those. In my back garden, just like Prince Charles at Highgrove, his stumpery is bigger than my whole garden, but this is my little stumpery. It's an area that was too shady to grow anything. So what I did was I hauled a bunch of stumps. I put a little water garden. I've got shade plants there and hung Spanish moss. And this is just a little area that I do for pure entertainment, and it's practically no maintenance. I've got a lot of wildlife that lives there. I got the splashy noise of the water garden. It has a nice, cool, humid effect. But that's my little stumpery. Just as some people have rock gardens, I've got a stump garden. And this is one of our native plants. Spanish moss grows all over Mississippi. It's one of our cool epiphytes. It lives in the trees, not on the trees. And in the low wet areas, we have insect-eating plants. These are some of the Sarracenia, the pitcher plants that are wild and native to Mississippi. See, so we've got a pretty lush environment. Although a lot of people say that the things in my garden are kind of weedy because I'm past president of the Native Plant Society. Yeah, I've got some weeds. I like goldenrod. I think it's a great plant. It's a terrific pollinator, and every good English garden is going to be loaded with goldenrod because it's a really good plant. Nobody's allergic to it, but they say it's a weed. Well, here's my definition of a weed. Some of you may be master gardeners. I actually started the Master Gardener program. I'm retired extension service, and Master Gardeners are taught that a weed is a plant out of place. And I'm thinking a weed is any plant that people don't really care about for one reason or another. It's only a weed from our point of view. My little garden, if you look at it from sitting on the deck, these are the kind of plants that I grow instead of having grass. I did plant a bunch of wildflowers out front, and it looked a little bit messy to the neighbors. And so somebody suggested I put a piece of split rail fence out there to make it look better. And I really didn't want to do it because I thought it was cynical, kind of Disney-esque. But anyway, against my better judgment, against my love of wildflowers, I put a piece of split rail fence out there, and immediately it made the cover of Southern Living magazine. It wasn't the flowers, it wasn't the fence. It was that combination that said, yes, these are wildflowers, but they're in an area that's being tended by that human touch. That's that combination that's so important. I think I showed that before. I grow a lot of plants in containers. You can't see in my front yard a little hidden deck where I've got all of these plants. All of them are edible, are grown in 5-gallon paint buckets. I also have a herb garden and vegetable garden that's made out of a horse watering trough. It's 6-foot diameter. That way I don't have to bend over anything. I do like to grow things in containers. Matter of fact, I planted some lettuce, some multiplying onions, and some parsley in a hanging basket. And there's 3 reasons. First of all, I think it's kind of pretty. I know it's not great, but I think it's pretty. But it's not on the ground. The snails can't get to it. The ants can't get in it. The dog can't pee on it. And if you give me a squirt bottle of vinaigrette, I don't even have to bend over to eat it. But I think it's possible to have something that's pretty, and when you're tired of looking at it, you can eat it. And so that's the kind of thing I do. If you look at my driveway, you see this. It doesn't look like much. It's not that great. But what a lot of people don't realize, what they're seeing is a facade. If you go around the back of this, on the other side of it, is where I put my trash cans. Let me back it up. That's what it looks like from the street. And around the other side, that's what it looks like. How many of you got trash cans just sitting out in the open? And you can have a nice little garden on top of it. In the back of my pickup truck, it's a 1988 Ford F-150. I made a metal box. I fill it with potting soil. I accessorize a little bit, and I grow flowers and vegetables and herbs in the back of a pickup truck that has been over 300,000 miles with stuff growing in the back. It's been in 32 states. I grow stuff in the back of a pickup truck. And the reason I do this is because I get tired of people saying they can't garden. If I can garden in the back of a pickup truck, anybody can garden. That's just one example of, here's what it looks like, because I tend to over accessorize. All of my, all my gay friends have made me an honorary gay person because I love to accessorize. I tend to overdo it sometimes. Speaking of that, I saw this in a nice garden. I thought it was a real interesting antique bird, but I couldn't afford it. It was an antique Victorian metal thing. And so I'm thinking, what can I do if I wanted a bird, but I couldn't afford one like that? Well, I decided to put my grandmother's chicken out there. My grandmother couldn't afford anything better. This is something that my grandfather gave her as a wedding anniversary present because that's all the kids could afford. And every time she looked at her garden, she looked at that chicken. And it was as important to her as Louis XIV, 8-foot naked goddesses at Versailles. It was a feature that made sense in style and scale in her little garden. And matter of fact, I put it on a little plinth just to celebrate my grandmother's simple taste in gardening. And to me, it's just as important as the finest statues I've seen all over the world. I do tend to overdo it with pink flamingos. And some of you don't like pink flamingos. I get that. But I'm reminded of what the man who patented pink flamingos in 1957, the name of Don Featherstone, he was from Massachusetts. He patented pink flamingos, and he and I were lecturing together. And I asked him why he did it. He said, think about this, Felder. Before plastic, only rich people could afford poor taste. So just one of those things. I also have a Christmas tree made out of tires. So some people don't get it. You know what? Life is short. Life is short. How many of you put glass in your windows because it cheers you up in the wintertime? It gives you like a little homemade stained glass. Any of y'all do that? It cheers you up. And what I want to do is I want to show something that's very similar. Many of you are familiar with Dale Chihuly stuff over in Seattle. I interviewed Dale for a book I did. A lot of people think this is really, really nice, and it is, but how many of us can afford Dale Chihuly glass art? We can't do it. But in my little garden, looking out towards the street, can you see the little glass plates I put out there? I got a local artist to do that, and it's not Dale Chihuly, but to me, it's just as sweet. Matter of fact, I have a bottle tree. Vivian, I understand there's not a lot of bottle trees in your neck of the woods. How many of you, some of you just probably don't like that at all, but I would submit to you that all a bottle tree is redneck Chihuly. It's just it's glass in a garden. It's your version of that. Here's one of mine. I've got 10 different bottle trees in my little garden. And no, they're not Dale Chihuly, but aren't they the same thing? Aren't they glass in the garden? What are we really trying to do? Here's what mine look like in the wintertime, because we get snow even in Mississippi, believe it or not. That's of course, 2 days later, it's all gone, but this was my garden December last year. It's not about voodoo. It's not about evil spirits and bottles and all like that. All we're doing is we're holding glass up to the sky so its colors can sing. This is what Dale Chihuly does on a grand scale. He's an artist. I'm not an artist, but I can do, I mean, I've seen Chihuly stuff. It's nice. But to me, this is just as important. In my little garden, the right scale, the right style. It's not very pretentious, but it has the same effect. And I think that's really important for us to realize that. My great-grandmother was a horticulturist, born in the 1880s. When I was 10 years old, she called me little professor. She showed me so many things. She showed me, y'all grow larkspur? You grow larkspur?
Yes.
Any of y'all know what's special about a larkspur flower? Something really unique about it? Anybody? My great-grandmother showed me this. I grew larkspur. A lot of people go there. If you look at the individual flower, they've all got a rabbit in them.
Oh.
Look at there. Every one of those flowers has got a rabbit in it. That's not horticulture. That's gardening. There's no reason to know that, but isn't it fun? She kept, my great-grandmother kept track of what grew in her garden. She has notes of what grew in her grandmother's garden, and I still have her notes. And she remembered her mother dressed up to go to church would carry a bouquet of flowers in her hand. And I call it the Rumpelstiltskin effect. You take common plants, put them together in a nice combination, weaving golden garments out of common straw. And that's what cottage gardeners do. We have camellias, Camellia japonica. They're starting to bloom for us now. When my father passed away in January several years ago, I made a bouquet with a Camellia japonica. This is called Pink Perfection. It's berries of Nandina domestica and flowers of the fragrant paperwhite, Narcissus tezera, which is, all of these are in my garden right now. Paperwhite's blooming before Christmas for us. But the bouquet looked all right. But what interesting, the plants look good in the garden. The round evergreen camellia, the feathery effect of the ferny effect of the nandinas, and then the bright, the fragrance of the skirt of the paperwhites. Was interesting. All of these were picked the week my father died. They were all planted by my great grandmother before my father was even born. They've all been performing for decades with no water, no sprays, no dividing, no horticulture. And I'm thinking that's a good way to start with our neighbors who are a little bit daunted by the apple pie that's been set on fire. My great grandmother also told me that if you want, she was a garden club lady. I'm a past president of our men's garden club. She said, if you want to get a blue ribbon, it's not what you know, it's not even what you do, it's how you figure out ahead of time what the judges are looking for and deliver that. In other words, you want blue ribbons, you got to jump through hoops. And that's a goal. Horticulture helps with that. But some of us just want to enjoy ourselves. By the way, my great grandmother had these flower frogs, you know, for arranging flowers. Y'all know about those. And when she died, my grandmother got them, the concrete chicken lady. And when she died, my mother got them. And I'm seeing a pattern. My mother's literally on her deathbed. I went to her house and I stole every one of them. I got all these antique flower frogs. But only one person at a time can own these flower frogs because of physical possessions. At the same time, my great grandmother had a fig tree and she showed me how to root cuttings. My children, my grown children, have got fig trees that came from their great great grandmother's garden because she showed us how to share these things. I think that's real important. And not only that, but she showed me how to make homemade fig preserves. My friends from Vermont brag about Vermont maple syrup, but I can tell you, you can buy Vermont maple syrup at every Piggly Wiggly in Mississippi. You got to know somebody to get homemade fig preserves. And when I make fig preserves, I got some there. I feel like that I'm partaking in something that's been done for centuries, and it makes me feel more connected. And so I show my children how to do the same thing. How are we doing for time? I don't have my clock with me. What time is it getting to be?
We're good.
We're good. Okay. I want to touch a little bit on the philosophy, I guess, of gardening. I'm not going to really get into all the horticulture rules. I saw this sign outside a church in Port Gibson, Mississippi. And I'm thinking, if they got nothing to say, I got nothing to say. And that's the way horticulture is. Sometimes horticulture just gets me all balled up with what you should be doing. And so I end up not doing anything. It reminds me of having to put gears together, making things run. If you've ever made a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich, you know to slice the tomato without making it so thick it squirts out the side. You know how much mayonnaise to put on without making your bread soggy, how much salt and pepper. Those are real skills that translate from the garden, from the kitchen to the garden. It really is that simple. Have y'all heard you're supposed to prune? I know there's a lot of roses. You know, have y'all heard you're supposed to prune a rose above an outwards facing 5-leaflet leaf? Have y'all heard that before?
Come on.
You know, there's a reason for that, but did you know you can prune roses with a cherry bomb and they still bloom? You can prune a rose with a deer and it'll sprout back out and bloom. You don't have to do all that horticulture stuff. That's my point. You don't have to. I've got a friend who likes hostas. Hostas will not grow in the sun in Mississippi. So he put an umbrella over it.
That's right.
You know, this is what's that? Yeah, this is what we call modifying the environment. That's a horticulture thing. A gardener will just simply drag it back into the shade. See, so you can do things that may not make sense. I know it's really dry. You know, it is so dry in the summertime, but this is not something I choose to do. I choose not to have to water all the time. I do have a 300-gallon cistern. Every time we get 1 inch of rain, I get 300 gallons of water. And so I do that. I choose plants that don't need a bunch of care. It's just like it reminds me of composting. You know, you can make You can grow stuff in just plain dirt. And there's so many rules for composting, so many things about carbon nitrogen ratio and biophilic bacteria and carbon, all that stuff you can do. There's only really 2 rules for composting, just 2. Stop throwing that stuff away and pile it up. It's called a leaf pile. It's a leaf pile. I know in your part of the country, it takes a long time to decompose because it's dry. You may have to water it. But a lot of people make simple things complicated. It reminds me again of the apple pie that's been fancied up so much that nobody wants to do it. So a lot of people don't compost because they think you got to know all that stuff, and you don't. Gardening is really simple. How many of y'all, what's that? How many of y'all have ever seen a hospice society garden in the wintertime? Y'all grow hospice? Yeah. I appreciate labels. I have a few plants. Matter of fact, I've got an area in my garden that's got labels in it, and people look at it and say, "Oh, that's nice. He's so smart." What they don't realize, there's nothing planted there. It's just labels. You know, I get it. The horticulturist in me totally gets it. The same thing with pruning. I saw this in Portland. I thought that was really, really nice. It's bizarre, but that was in Portland, Oregon. I'm thinking, what about this? This is up in the north of England. This garden has been pruned this way for over 400 years, and they think it's normal. They think it's okay to do that. And so when I see this in a little garden in Black Hawk, Mississippi, the fella can't even spell topiary. He's got a 5th grade education. He does this on his own with just hand clippers and string. He doesn't know that he's doing something fantastic. He's just simply expressing himself. Now, I want to touch quickly on pass along plants, because one of the books I wrote is a bestseller called Pass Along Plants. It's about the kind of plants that everybody grows but nobody buys. And there's 3 things that makes a plant a pass along plant. And you know these, but I'm going to review it. First of all, the more different values a plant has. If it's pretty, that's good. If it's edible, that's better. Pretty and edible is better. If it's an heirloom, if it's something that you got from somebody, or it's got extra fragrance, that it blooms longer, it produces all these different values. The more different values a plant has, the more different people are going to want to grow it. But that's not enough. It also has to be easy to grow in just dirt. If you've got to gussy up the soil, if you've got to water it a lot or spray it, fewer and fewer people are going to grow it. So a valuable plant that's easy to grow is it can be grown by more people. And then lastly, resistance to pests. Nobody wants a plant that gets all, do y'all say boogered up where you're from?
Yeah.
Okay, get all booger. Here's the most important thing, easy to propagate. Doesn't matter how valuable a plant is, right? Easy to grow. If you can't share it, it's not going to go very far. So typical pass along plant is going to have all those values. It's one that my great grandmother grew. It was a night blooming cereus. Ugly plant. This is the plant that makes my hair look good. It's not a pretty plant. But when it blooms, people gather around, they wait for it to open up at night, they tell stories, and they congregate. They share stories, they communicate, they commune over this one plant, and then everybody leaves with a piece of it. It reminds me of friendship yeast. You know, when you make bread that you got yeast from somebody, got it from somebody, that's a pass along yeast. 4 o'clocks I was raised with because they bloom in the evening. And when it was too hot to be in the house, my great grandmother planted over 350 different kinds of daffodils. She's been gone 40 years now. And these are the ones that I grow in my garden that all came from her. She planted 350 different daffodils in the 1930s. All of these still survive. And those are the ones that I want. I don't care about the ones that didn't make it. These are the ones that I enjoy because they perform for me without me having to do a lot of stuff. And this is where you find those. You find around old abandoned house sites. You can drive all over Washington State and find old home sites because there'll be a clump of irises or something there. These are the survivors that I plant in my garden. We have things like milk and wine lily, the big crinums in the summertime, little hot chili pekin peppers that will light you up, and they're easy to share. Cotton that was brown before it was bred to be white. They bred cotton to be white so they could dye it blue jean color, but cotton used to be brown, and we share the seeds for these. And chrysanthemums that bloom in the fall, the old Clara Curtis type chrysanthemums, they never fail to bloom. These will grow in a cemetery dead people can grow these plants, and they're easy to root and grow. And I think that, and the last one I want to mention is one that a lot of people really don't, they turn their noses up at it. The old orange daylily. It's common, it's vulgar, it's outhouse, ditchbank lily. Give it every bad name in the world. I'm a board member of the American Horticultural Society. We grow it by our sign for 3 reasons. First of all, it's easy to grow. None of us is going to waddle down there and water it. Second of all, it's pretty enough. It's a common plant. It's something, because gardening is a big tent. This is something that shows you don't have to be a horticulturist to be in our gardening club. You can just grow easy plants that your grandmother grew. And third of all, nobody's going to steal this because they either got it or you don't. But the reason I want to mention that, because I have studied gardens on 5 continents. I travel worldwide every year, not this year, almost every year I travel worldwide, going to botanic gardens and flower shows. And the single most commonly grown pass along plant on earth on 5 continents is not for sale anywhere, is this old double orange daylily called Quanzo. It's not for sale, but you see it everywhere on earth. And get this, it doesn't grow from seed. Every time you see this, it came from somebody who got it from somebody who got it from somebody. For 3,000 years, this plant has been propagated by gardeners, not horticulturists. Horticulturists, they want the latest, they want a $350 Hemerocallis. They don't want this old orange thing. It's not about being lazy. Slow gardening is not about being lazy. I can show you lazy. I know lazy. I'm from the South. We can do that. It's more about sitting on a swing and savoring stuff and enjoying the evening, the what cool breezes, and listening to the birds and paying attention and talking to each other. It's relaxing and enjoying. It's about finding your bliss, doing what you want to do. There are people who are in competition, grow the biggest everything on earth. I've been to so many of these heirloom festivals from California to England to Japan. They all want, it's a competition, and that's horticulture. That's great. But feeding birds is just as satisfying, and it brings color and drama and motion to your garden. It makes you feel better too. Garden photography, positioning things, moving around, getting the right angle, taking pictures to share them with your friends. That's part of gardening. I'm not very good at growing tomatoes for those who are from England. I'm not very good at it at all, but I plant them every year anyway because they give me hope. They give me hope. And knowing that they're probably not going to turn red, the squirrel's going to get it, they're going to die from disease, whatever. Knowing they're probably not going to make it, instead of being goal-oriented, I take my Sharpie pen out in the garden and I put smiley faces on mine. I put smiley faces on my tomatoes because that may be all I'm going to get, but I'm going to enjoy and savor the whole thing. If I make red tomatoes, that's great, but that's not entirely the point. Any of y'all ever stack rocks? Any rock stackers out there? It makes you feel kind of silly, but makes you feel kind of good at the same time. Stacking rocks is a solitary thing. The reason I want to mention this, because a lot of people will take something simple and easy. This is an apple pie version of stacking rocks, and they turn it into a club where you have to do all sorts of stuff. This is not slow gardening. The person who does this, I think they need to have their doctor maybe up their Wellbutrin a little bit because they need to relax. It's not a competition. This is a friend of mine from London who's been growing this plant in this pot for over 40 years. He prunes it, he waters it, he fertilizes it, he root prunes it, he trains it. He's been doing this for 40 years. He pays attention, he savors it. It gives him purpose. It gives him something proud. He has so many emotions about this. That's slow gardening. The problem is, one of these days when he passes away, one of his children are going to inherit this, and they're not going to be that attentive. Slow gardening is a personal thing. It's not something necessarily that everybody's into. All the senses, all the seasons, you know, if you're not gardening all the time, in the fall, I love picking up, I've got a 125 mile an hour backpack leaf blower, but I love raking leaves because I like the way it sounds, I like it smells, and it involves me. So I like simple tools in my garden where I'm the only moving part. I savor all the senses. You know, if you've ever gotten your fingernails so dirty you had to scrub them, and you scrub them so hard it made your fingertips tingle, that's part of gardening too. Tingling fingertips and cleaning your fingernails. That's part of gardening. And we often overlook that. In the springtime, You know, we have plants that are so easy to grow, they grow out by the mailbox. Spring is easy. Summertime is not that hard. We have roses that grow in cemeteries. There are roses that don't need a bunch of spray. Fall, you know, before you rake or mow the leaves, the fall colors, that's something that we savor. It's not a horticultural thing. It's a gardening thing. That's important. And our houses in the summertime are so great. We just have to remember that in the wintertime, this same scene, the same angle is going to look like this. And so you have to plan ahead. You have to enjoy things all the time. You can have a beautiful garden in the winter if you choose plants that are at the peak in the winter. Every British, all the Royal Horticultural Society garden, they've got a special area set aside that's dedicated to be at its peak in January and February. It's possible to do that. It's about finding your garden bliss. The only picture I'm going to show of this is my neighbor. His name is Lamar Evans. He mows his grass himself, and he puts oil in his carburetor. Now, why would he do that? Any ideas?
Mosquito.
Well, it's a good idea.
Mosquitoes.
Most people think, but see, we're trying to solve our problems. Why would he do that? He's doing it because he thinks it's funny. Look at his smile. He's the only guy on our street mowing the grass who's smiling and laughing because he thinks it's funny. And in a weird way, that's savoring what you do. It irritates the neighbors, trust me on that. And then the last thing is about sharing with others. It's really important to gardening to share. If you've ever played this game, somebody shows you how to do it. It's interesting. Uses a piece of string. You're the only moving part. You show it to somebody. They learn it easily. They show it to somebody. First thing you know, this little game is spread all over the world through all cultures, all religions, all persuasions. Children all over the world do this, and it's not written down anywhere. It's shared from person to person to person. I think gardening should be the same way. We have master gardeners who go to the cemetery where we grow roses, and they have rose rooting demonstrations every winter to show people how to grow roses that will grow anywhere. They share the knowledge by having meetings like that. When my children were small, I made them grow peppers. They didn't like growing stuff. They didn't like peppers, but they like it now. And learning to grow peppers, they transferred that to all their other things. And as they grow up now, they're wonderful gardeners. When my son pulled his first carrots, I turned me back and he pulled every one of them. And instead of hollering at him, I made him break them open and smell them. To this day, he loves the smell of broken carrots. When my daughter was small, I made her smell magnolias, which is my state's official state flower. And everywhere she goes, the rest of her life, I don't care who she is, how old she is, where she goes, the rest of her life, every time she smells a magnolia, she can be transported back to being a child again, at home, in her home ground, and she can think about me. That's part of gardening. We have plant swaps all the time where people get together and bring plants. And the neat part about it, plants don't care if you're old or young, male or female, gay or straight, black or white. Plants don't care. They are a universal language that we can share with each other. Right around town, and you can see who shares by the plants they grow. So that's sort of my general spiel. It's not my full talk on this, but when my daughter was small, my mother showed her how to pick up pecans in the yard. My daughter doesn't remember a lot about her grandmother. She remembers her grandmother showing her how to pick up pecans, and she's a better person because of it. One of the books I wrote is called Passing on Plants. The other is called Slow Gardening. But I came up with one, and I want to sort of wrap stuff up with this idea of a third thing. The plants are one thing. How you grow them is another thing. But who does this is the other thing. Looking at this picture, can you spot which gardener is most likely to be a little on the maverick side? A little different from everybody else? There are people like that all over the world. There's not many, but they're scattered all over the world. They don't know each other. There's not a way to get together. But gardeners who do things a little bit differently, they're the ones who feel like that they can do what they want to do. They're not rebels. They're not pushing back. They're just simply trying to do their own thing. They're the kind of folks that do their toilet paper different than you or I do it. I have people say, you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. I'm thinking, I don't go to somebody's house at a party, go to the bathroom and turn the toilet paper roll around, because it really doesn't matter. Whichever way you roll is okay. And gardening is that way too. So I've got a book that's coming out in January next month. It's about maverick gardeners, determined independent gardeners. And it features people who leave their garden hose out. A maverick gardener is going to have a row of plants in pots on the driveway, hoping they have a place to get planted before they die in the pot. Plant purgatory. If you've got a plant purgatory out there, you're a determined independent gardener. There's so many different ways we can tell who's independent. Matter of fact, this is a guy who's featured, a guy named Dr. Dirt. Leon Goldsberry goes by Dr. Dirt. He was a co-host of my national public radio program until he passed away several years ago. He came into Jackson every week of the year on a bus, a little small town. Every week of the year for 5 years, he brought in a bouquet of flowers he cut from his garden that morning, every week of the year. You're not going to get yard of the month. He's not in the garden club, but he had a beautiful garden and he loved it. He savored it. And by the way, this is how you can see most maverick gardeners, because they're not paying attention to you. They're playing in their garden. And so we came up with this thing called determined independent gardeners, or diggers. That's what this whole thing is about. My last slide, I wanted to mention that I did not know I was going to grow up this way. I'm a retired horticulturist. I'm a so-so gardener. I got a lot of quirky stuff. I don't have a garden hose. I don't have a sprayer. I'm not afraid of chemicals. Roundup doesn't bother me. But when I go out in my garden, I want to relax and enjoy and smell and taste and see and hear and feel all this stuff. I want to have a garden that I can enjoy that day, whether or not it ever gets any place. Here's something that's on a tombstone in my little hometown of Indianola, Mississippi. American by birth, Southern by the grace of God. I appreciate that. My friend B.B. King, I knew him well for a long time. He and I appreciate so much opportunity to share stuff with y'all. And that's sort of my spiel for this morning. How we doing?
Looking good.
Stop the share. Let me see what this is. I got to turn it back over to somebody. Stop the share. I don't know how to turn the thing back over to Vivian. Anybody know?
Remember, you go up to the little blue box there, where you have to go where I'm at.
I see a blue box. You know, we practiced it the other day. Wait, here we go. Here we go.
How did your
There.
neighbors?
You know what? We did this in under an hour.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but if anybody had any questions or comments.
Peggy, what's up? By the way, let me mention this. If y'all would like some more information, if you just Google my name, I come up like a bad gas. And don't go to my website. Go to the Felder Rushing blog. I haven't done anything to my website in years. The Felder Rushing blog, it has some more pictures. It also has a way to email me if you have questions. And by the way, Ed Hume, y'all know Ed Hume?
Yes.
Old friend. Ed and I we stayed at each other's homes 30 years ago. I've known Ed forever. Wonderful man. He's a lot nicer than I am. And I'm not as smart as some of the other folks. Anyway, I spent a lot of time in your neck of the woods. So anybody got questions or something?
There it goes right there.
Uh-oh. View. I don't see reactions, chat. Okay, I clicked the chat thing. There we go. I checked the book out the library was. Everybody should mute. Love your approach. How did your neighbor respond to your garden? First of all, I've been writing in the statewide newspapers for 40 years. I'm on national public radio, and I walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors are not entirely enthralled with my garden, but my garden's been on the cover of magazines, and they're neat. No, what I do is I share stuff. Along my curb, I have some rosemary, some oregano, I plant basil, and I welcome all the neighbors bring their children by to cut culinary herbs to cook with. So by inviting them to bring their children by, it sort of hooks them, and they touch my garden. They realize it's not so bad when you can look up close. But luckily, I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a homeowners association.
Red.
And the garden has been, it's been featured on HGTV. So, you know, they may not like it, but it's like the pink flamingo. They don't know what to say. Other question, where did you get your horticulture degree? Mississippi State University and Louisiana State University. That's, but I've also studied at Royal Botanic Garden at Kew. What?
Wow.
I would like to mention this. You know, the bottle trees, somebody said that they think bottle trees are kind of tacky. Oh, they said, well, I just don't really like them. And I looked at her and said, you know, you're hanging stuff out of holes in your ears. She said, I beg your pardon. I said, that's right. You hang stuff out of holes in your ears. I put bottles in my tree. We are even.
Humidity.
So you don't have to like it. Some people don't like broccoli. So anyway, other question, tried red okra on Spokane. Is it Spokane or Spokane?
Spokane.
Spokane.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure. Okra should do fine at low humidity. What it doesn't like is cool weather. If you wait until it gets really warm and grow it in a container so that it stays warm, it really needs to be. We have a hard time growing okra in England because it's too cool at night. It likes hot weather, but it's from sub-Saharan Africa. It'll take low humidity. It just needs a lot of heat. Vivan?
Brian.
I've been calling Vivian all the time. She's so sweet. She's so nice to me. Let me see. Love your garden. It looks very lush. How do you maintain it? The way I maintain it is I've spent 40 years when I started. I'm the retired state urban horticulture specialist with the Extension Service. And I spent 40 years of looking at plants that do well with no care, cemeteries, small towns, country gardens, poor parts of town. And I see the plants that do really, really well. And I plant those in nice combinations. So if I see a plant that's growing in a cemetery and another plant's growing in a country garden, another plant's growing someplace, and they're all growing no care at all, I'll pull them together into a nice little combination. And it looks like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just growing unkillable plants. Same thing in the back of my truck. I found out through trial and error what will take 105 degrees, what will take 15 degrees, and what will take 81 miles an hour, because they got to take all three of those. And if it didn't make it, I pulled them out and replaced them till they ended up with plants that do well. So I spent a career of looking for the kind of plants that are, you've heard right plant, right place. That's what I mean. So I just pull stuff together in combinations, and they don't work. I just get rid of them and put something else in the hole. It's not like they're little kittens, ladies. They're plants. Sorry. Planted some eggplants in my garden. They didn't really start growing until the weather cooled off. In your part of the country, eggplants need a lot of, they need sunshine for energy, but they don't like really, really hot weather. And if it cools off at night, just like the tomatoes, okra, they really don't like to cool off that much at night. I would shade them in the middle of the day, but they need at least 5 or 6, 7 hours of direct sunshine to fruit. How is climate change affecting the Southern garden? We've had 5 of the hottest years on record in the past 6 years. We normally get our first frost around the 1st of November. It was the 1st of December when it got this year. It's hotter. We're having more and more hurricanes. We're having wetter summers than we ever had. In England, they're having drier summers than they've ever had. I live in England half the year, and the reservoirs dry up in the summertime because the current that's going around there is not bringing as much rainfall. So it's definitely changing the climate. We're seeing plants from Florida that will grow in Mississippi now that wouldn't 10, 50, 30 years ago.
Mm.
Do you fertilize? Yes, I do. I'm not an organic gardener, but I'm mostly organic. And I use compost. I use cottonseed meal, which is organic. And that's pretty much it. I feed my worms. I put mulch out. I feed my worms with cottonseed meal and compost, and they turn that into good fertilizers. And I have our soil tested every 10 years to see if I need anything else. But most of the time, people over fertilize and they brag about it. The plants don't like it. It's like too much salt. You know, you put too much salt and sooner or later you're going to get hypertension. Same thing with fertilizer. You can give plants their version of hypertension. So again, I'm a horticulturist. I tested soils for university, and most people over fertilize. If you feed your worms and mulch your garden, it'll, for the most part, this way people gardened before Miracle Grow was invented. Gardeners got by. Let me see. Are you using drip irrigation? I don't use drip irrigation here. I do in England because I travel a lot when I live in England, and people don't realize those beautiful lush hanging baskets all have drip irrigation. I choose plants that don't need water. When I leave, I go to England for the Chatsworth and then the Chelsea flower shows, and I stay until the fall flower shows are over. I cover the flower shows for a lot of magazines and stuff. And so before I leave, any container plants that are going to have to be watered, I dump them in the compost. I start them back over again. I grow a lot of succulents, a lot of hardy succulents that'll take the heat and that'll take the cold. So I try to choose plants that don't need a lot of water. So this has been interesting this year because I've been here in Mississippi all summer instead of in England, and I actually grew some stuff that needed to be watered, and a lot of them didn't do that well because I found out I'm not that good a gardener. I'm a good planter, good gardener. Anything else? Are they growing tea in Mississippi? Yes. Tea is can you grow camellias? Camellias japonica?
Mm-mm.
No,
Can you grow sasanquas?
nope, don't know what that is.
Okay, Camellia sasanqua is a fall blooming camellia, smaller flowers. Camellia sinensis is a camellia plant with small late summer fall flowers. You grow it in a container and you shear the new growth. You prune it all the time, and the new growth, when it first comes out, it's the little tender leaves that you snip off and you dry to make tea leaves, and that just makes it put new. So you can grow a tea plant, Camellia sinensis, in a container. Now we have a place that has around 100 acres of camellia, the tea plant. All the tea in China comes from a camellia plant, and you can grow it in a pot. Have to bring it in if it's going to get really cold, but it'll do fine in a pot. What is this? Look at, is that it? Have I run out of, have I worn y'all out? I wish I could be there and just talk. I wish we still get together and hug, because I'm a hugger. I'm an old hugger. You know, me and Ed Hume, we're huggers. But things have changed so much. But you have a good extension service in Washington. It's one of the best. Y'all know that. Some states have got good extension services. Some don't. I don't know about the Master Gardener program there in Spokane, but I know you got that nice little botanic garden. And by the way, there's something. Oh, if you want to know what it's like in Mississippi, go to the conservatory, the big greenhouse there at your garden. Go in it in July and make yourself stay there for 3 hours. And welcome to my life. That's exactly what it's like. But they also have the succulent, the desert garden there. And I grow a lot of those kind of plants in containers so they get the extra drainage they need. We have too much rain. We get around 60 inches of rainfall a year compared to Europe, what, 20 or so?
Mm-hmm.
But so I grow my succulents in containers that drain well. They won't grow in the soil because it stays too wet. Great presentation. Thanks. Jim Henson Museum still open in Indianola. It's actually in Leland, which is about 12 miles from Indianola. And yes, it is. Jim Henson invented the Muppets, Kermit the Frog.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we pretty well worn it out. I've been here for an hour. I'm ready for beer, ladies. I don't know about y'all.
Okay, everybody, we'll wrap it up then. Thank you so much.
You so much.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy gardening.
Yay.
Bye-bye.